All right, we're started. All right, guys, we're back with another episode. Is this one's wild. It's
Man,
wild. It's got like lots of branches, and I mean, researching this stuff to me was a mind dump. I'll be honest. It was
there's so
crazy.
much information and there's so many different rabbit holes, and it's like, whoa, you have to stop and you have to kind of focus on one rabbit hole at a time because it's a lot of
Yeah,
information.
it is, and we've kind of condensed it into a more digestive um, kind of format, you could say. But a lot of this stuff you'll have if you want to research it. I've got sources and stuff at the end of the podcast that I'll suggest and stuff like that. But our topic today is geoengineering, the weaponization of weather by
Yes.
the DoD, and all the people that seem to have a finger in it, and it's pretty wild. So,
Really wild.
Secrets of the Fallen podcast. Here we go.
Yeah.
Um, so where does the weaponization of weather start? From my research and stuff, I tracked it back to 19 or October 13th of 1947 with Project Cirrus. Project Cirrus was conducted by the Army Signal Corps, U.S. Air Force, and Naval Research Labs. With the help of Vincent Schaefer from General Electric, he was
Yeah.
the chief scientist for General Electric in this particular area of expertise, and they were their goal was to really see if human beings could have an effect on an active hurricane through cloud seeding.
Mhm.
Um, and that term much more vague the more research I've done into it than
Yeah.
you hear on the news or you see in media and stuff like that. Cloud seeding, it's just a process of implementing chemicals, particles, um, or nanotechnologies into the Earth's atmosphere to affect weather and a
Yeah.
predictive outcome. That's basically my own definition of it. Um, but so Project Cirrus goes back to 1947. What they did was they filled up uh, B 2 bombers, and it was a B 16 um, plane with several pounds of dry ice and ionized aluminum.
Mhm.
And they basically dumped it into uh, the eye and the outer rings of Hurricane King. That was basically it. Looked for those keeping up with the news now, it was going through the same type of pattern as Milton, kind of, and right off the tip of Florida, where
Mhm.
and then going out to the Atlantic, which most hurricanes do. If they hit landfall more into Texas, Louisiana, and stuff, they'll dissipate over over the United States. But the ones that kind of just skirt the edge will dissipate out into the Atlantic. So this was just a hurricane. I think it was a Category 2 hurricane, severe storm, but not anything that uh, would cause too much damage or anything like that. Um, so as it passed over the southern tip of Florida, they began dumping dry ice and ionized aluminum into the atmosphere, into the eye of the storm. Uh, Went back and they just wanted to see what happened. Well, to their surprise, what happened was They say their goal was to weaken the storm. They said after the storm passed land, they were just expected it to keep going to the Atlantic, and they just wanted to see what the effects of it was out there. However, that's not what happened at all. It did not
Uh,
do anything of that.
uh,
Instead, it took a 135-degree turn back into Savannah, Georgia.
yeah, it did
Caused
two to
two.
three million dollars worth of damage.
Yes, yes, it did.
It, and
One person
in
was
today's
killed.
money, yeah, one person in today's money that would probably be close to a billion. You know,
Well, I calculated at 35 million.
okay, 35. Okay,
Yeah, but if you can't really do that comparison. The more I thought about it, because I want to kind of give an accurate description of what it would look like today. Savannah was not as populated as it is today.
yeah.
The amount of infrastructure was uh, not developed back then. So there's really no telling how much damage if you had it today's term. I would guess at least $1 billion in damage.
Yeah.
Um, that could easily be done by a Category 2 hurricane,
Hmm.
especially hitting a coastal area that's not known for hurricanes that much. Savannah doesn't get hit with hurricanes very often,
Yeah.
uh, very rarely. So they wouldn't have the levees, the kind of defense for storm surges like Louisiana or Texas or Mississippi. Those areas would. Um, the funny thing was, so after this project wasn't like a declassified project, so it was out there. People, it was being reported on and stuff like that all beforehand. Um, so after this storm took a turn, people were pissed. Um, they automatically was like, y'all messed with the storm. It hit Georgia and Savannah. People in Savannah pissed off because their town got destroyed, and lots of lawsuits started popping up.
Hmm.
To make matters worse, uh, Vincent, he obviously was collecting a paycheck for this experiment for the U.S. government for his work on the storm. So, in order to uphold the credibility of his own project that turned into a huge disaster, he gets on uh, the local news and says he's 99% sure that what they did with that storm had a direct impact to hurricane hitting Savannah. Uh, because he was proud of it. He was like, "Hey, I accomplished my mission. I affected a hurricane. That's what they paid me to do.
Hmm.
So I'm not going to go out there and be like, "Oh no, it failed," when it didn't."
Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
So after that, Vincent disappears. Poof, he's gone. No more talking from Vincent. Don't know what happened to him. Can't figure it out.
And because of that, GE said that they would never take part in another government experience experiment like that again. And so far, to my knowledge, they haven't because it gave them so much bad publicity.
Yeah, it did. And I had a lot of questions, or not a lot of questions, just one big question about that is what is General Electric doing messing around with hurricanes?
Exactly.
What
Yeah.
like what benefit is that? What I never found an answer to that. I never could find anything about that, but I just thought that was weird. Um,
Hmm.
Almost as weird as Bill Gates going into hurricanes and farming and all sorts of weird stuff. But we're gonna get to old Billy here in a bit.
Oh, Billy Boy.
Yeah, he well, we've got a lot on him. Um, yeah, so project that was basically the opening of the door to weaponizing weather.
Yes.
Uh, and you had the CIA director just a few years ago. Oh, and they've cloud seeding, weather modification has all been repackaged and rebranded into a term called geoengineering.
Hmm.
The purpose of geoengineering is to combat climate change
Yes.
because our Earth is heating up, and basically us, the average citizens, are to blame for all this. Not
Hmm.
this, because we're the ones pouring crap into storms and there's atmosphere. Oh wait, no, we're not. Okay,
Psych.
that's not us. That's
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
You see how they do that? That's pretty
Hmm.
funny. Um, but yeah, so I just want to kind of start it or kind of go over briefly of Project Sirius, kind of lay the foundation of what we're talking about. That was kind of the beginning to the research on cloud seeding and how they can basically, once they realize they can control weather, or not control weather at that time, but affect it in a way. Of course, the Department of Defense wanted to pour billions into how to weaponize it because that's what they do. They're Department of Defense. They see something cool and they want to weaponize it,
Hmm.
and then tell you it's for your benefit.
Hmm.
But
And it's been
uh,
speculated, Brandon. It's been speculated that they've been testing weather warfare since World War One.
oh yeah, oh we know of. I think it was called Project Butterfly during the Vietnam War, where they flooded. Um, they produced weather that dumped a ton of rain uh, all along the major supply chains in the Vietnam War.
Hmm.
Um, Basically, so much where uh, a few bases were basically islandized with flood water all the way around, and basically couldn't get supplies or anything through there. We do know about that. That's been declassified. So this stuff has been happening for a long time.
Yes.
And when you first hear about it, you think it sounds nuts. And I
You think?
personally thought it sounded, not many things surprise me anymore, but this kind of was like, how is that even possible?
Yeah. It sounds totally, Star Trek science fiction stuff, man. You know.
It really does. It sounds, because people think of weather as automatically an act of God, uh, a massive uncontrollable force. But these people think they control anything. So I'm not surprised they've attempted it. I'm just surprised they've kind of perfected it.
Yeah.
Um, but so I thought it kind of sounded far fetched, on kind of a reach. Um, Looking into the stuff, going into looking into the stuff, and then about halfway through, I'm like, well, crap, they can do that. And that honestly freaked me out a lot.
Yeah.
Um, but it's it's definitely interesting. But I know you wanted to talk about what Meg, um, but kind of going um, after Project Cirrus, they went. They kind of, after, since that got so much publicity, um, they dialed back the weather modification, at least of what we know of, as far as
Hmm.
what they've declassified for a while, up until about what was the 60s.
Yeah. The '60s, and then they started. I think they were still doing testing on and doing certain experiments with weather. That's where HARP comes into fruition, is using basically uh, you know magnetic electrical pulses to just have cloud interference to see if they can manipulate storms through HARP. Um, and as we've talked, I think now HARP is kind of older technology. There's newer things that they're using to try to modify the weather and to try to do control storms and to create certain weather anomalies. And so there's a lady by the name of Christian Megan. She was an Air Force whistleblower. So in 2002, right after 9/11, she entered the Air Force. You know, she wanted to do what was right for her country. She entered the Air Force. She became a biohazard officer with the Air Force, which basically what her job description was is that every chemical, every procedure that was done as far as working on the aircraft, her job was to make sure that the chemicals that were being used, the practices that were being used um, as far as the maintenance and repair on the aircraft were all done in specifications to keep the men and women working on these aircrafts and around these aircraft safe. And so what she began to do, she was writing MSDS, we know, which is uh, basically safety or what are they called? Safety data sheets is basically what they are. And so she was writing down these safety data sheets, and these chemicals were coming in that were caustic chemicals, and she couldn't understand why that these chemicals were coming in because they were caustic metal, basically liquid metal materials. And what would these be used for on aircraft? And so when she went to her superiors and questioned her superiors, they basically told her, well, it's a need to know basis. You don't need to know, so we're not going to tell you. And she said, no, wait a minute. I'm a safety officer. I have the right to know because I'm protecting the men and women that are working around these aircraft. And they basically blew her off and said, no, you don't need to know what these chemicals are. So as she was going along and she was getting kind of blown off and things were happening, there were other people that were around her that began to tell her, check into chemtrails. And she said in an interview, she said she didn't know what chemtrails were until she started doing the investigation. Now, there's two different types of exhaust that supposedly come off of aircraft. You have chemtrails and you have comtrails. Comtrails are normal exhaust from airplanes. So that would be the normal exhaust because of supersonic air coming through, and it's speeding up and creating water vapor, which is perfectly normal. That's what these jet engines and different engines are designed to do. So a contrail is something natural, or not natural, but it's nothing that is dangerous. It's just the way that the aircraft goes through the atmosphere and creates this contrail of water vapor. Well, a
And
chem
it dissipates too,
it
right?
it
It doesn't.
it it no, most of the time when you see a jet aircraft that is doing contrails, they you'll see them in the upper but they dissipate very quickly.
Right. It's not
They
like a
don't.
big long
Exactly.
thing.
It's nothing that goes all the way across the sky. You see it come off these engines, and you might have a small trail in the sky as you look up, a small trail, but if you do see it, it's going to dissipate very quickly, and it's by the time the airplane gets out of sight, within the matter of a few seconds or minutes, the you can't even tell that the aircraft was even there. But a chemtrail is something totally different. A chemtrail is actually chemicals that are purposely being exhausted from either engines or mechanical. sprayers on the aircraft's wings. So this is something totally different. And so when she began to do her investigation and she saw that, um, that chemtrails really were something that was real, she started to dig deeper and deeper. And what she started to see is she could see the flight logs and certain chemicals being loaded onto certain aircraft. And she said what she started to do is when she saw the flight logs and she knew that these aircraft were going to be taking off, then she would purposely go at the same time that these aircraft were taking off, and she began to watch these aircraft. And she began to see that they were leaving these chemtrails in the air, and that it took them a long time to dissipate, and that they would fall to the earth. So finally, she got changed to another air base because I think she was asking so many questions at the particular air base that she was at, they decided to transfer her. They didn't change her job status, they just changed her to another air base. And there at the other air base, she began to ask certain questions, and one of the her commanding officers was pretty open with her and said, "Hey, she said, hey, what is the deal with these chemtrails?" And her commanding officer said, "Well, this is chemtrails are, basically a liquid form of aluminum that is expelled from the aircraft to try to basically cause deflection of the sun and see if we can cool down the earth." And he said, at least that's what's been told to us. And she's like, but wait a minute, this is caustic chemicals that we the Air Force is spewing out of these aircraft. And basically our commanding officer said, well, yes, but we have orders to do it, so we've got to do it. So then what
And
she started, go ahead,
when
I'm
was
sorry.
this? Sorry.
So
Or
so this she entered the Air Force in 2002, and she really started to start her investigation around 2006, 2007. And then it
okay.
really it really took off around 2012. And now she is totally out of the Air Force and she's in the private sector. So she's working for a private entity. And she said, when she was in the Air Force, once she started doing an investigation and started asking a lot of questions and came out as a whistleblower, her job was threatened, her family was threatened, her health was threatened, all these things. They were trying to intimidate her to get her to shut up. And she just kept on fighting the good fight and trying to put out the information until now she's made the hop over into the private sector. And she basically says, if they think I had a big mouth then, I've got the biggest mouth now because I'm in the private sector and I can say what I want to say when I want to say it. And
Yeah,
because
that's I saw that interview
yeah, and
where she
so
said that was pretty funny.
yeah, exactly. So here's this woman that's trying her best to, come out because the federal government has denied it for years. Oh, no, no, no. We're not. These chemtrails are perfectly safe. They're perfectly harmless. Well, now she did the investigation that when those aircraft would take off and they would have the chemtrails, what she would do is days later she would go back and do soil sampling. And so she would sample the soil, and when the lab results came back, it came back that that soil had aluminum alloy in the soil, which causes major problems with um, within the plant life of our farms and our wildlife, as far as natural resources in nature preserves. It contaminates everything, Brandon. everything is contaminated
Oh yeah,
with
it's
these
been linked
particles.
to uh, since they started doing this, it's been linked to what Alzheimer's, cancers, um,
Yeah, it's been linked to
autism.
autism,
The
all these.
amount. Did you know that um, the recent autism, I guess, statistic? So early 2000s, it was like 1 in 60 something kids was diagnosed with autism. Now it's 1 in 4. It's
Yes,
1 in 4.
it's crazy, and
So if
and
you have
that's a whole
four
nother.
kids, statistically, one of them has autism.
And that's a whole nother issue because I believe that that has to do with vaccines as well. And I know that's a
Oh
whole
yeah.
nother rabbit hole to go down. But our federal government has, and when I say we, I mean our federal government. In America, we have allowed it because I don't think that we have asked enough questions and we haven't stood up enough. I think now with RFK and other people coming out and exposing different things, I think people are waking up to the fact that, hey, our government has been poisoning us for decades.
Well, I
Because
think what's happened now is that I think that we we're realizing that we've been gaslighted for so long because
yes,
what they're telling us now and what's actually going on is so polar opposite
hmm
that it just doesn't make sense. And for
doesn't make
people
sense at all.
who can see it that haven't really fallen for, I guess, for the programming that, and when I say program, that is actually a thing that the CIA does through uh, multiple different avenues of your life. Uh,
Hmm.
all the time, people are being programmed. There's really no way to avoid it unless you just live out in the middle of the nowhere.
Yeah.
Um, but that is an actual thing. I mean, why would they not? How else are they supposed to maintain power? I mean, you get people to agree to do the things that you want them to do. That's I don't think that's crazy to say that the government practices that.
Oh,
Uh,
100%.
but now the things that they're asking us, that they're wanting us to believe and wanting us to do and wanting us to be okay with, are so crazy that it's got a lot of people snapping out of it. I think that's what
Uh,
we're seeing now.
exactly. And so now we're beginning to see that, the government or the powers that be, the deep state, um, the DOD. What is the purpose of this? Why are they doing? They're saying it's because they want to control climate change. But here's what I think the true narrative is with this is they're trying to cause these massive storms by doing these experiments and by using weather control so they can paint the narrative that it is climate change because they want to use the narrative of climate change to force legislation that will control us because if we
Yeah,
each
the
kept a
first three words of that, they want to control, and then period.
exactly 100%.
It's
it's
not climate change. It's they
it's
just want to. This is just another avenue of control because I'll look at it this way: we can say government, government, government. The government uh, is a system that the government itself is a puppet
mhm,
for the powers that actually control what goes on and what happens in the world.
mhm,
And the U.S. government is the most powerful tool in that toolbox.
yeah,
Uh, and then it trickles down from there. But the U.S. government, there's no denying that is one of the most powerful governments in the world, and they have their finger in everything. So why not harness that tool first? So why I don't believe everybody in government is evil.
No,
However,
I don't believe that either.
I believe that people who either are at the very top of the government, like executive branch, judicial branch, all those branches, those people are evil. And they
Mhm.
and what I've really realized researching this stuff is I had a big question. Why would they do this to their own people? I asked myself that question for a long time, kind of really
Mhm.
thought on it and deep dive. And the thing is, they don't think of us as their people.
Mhm.
We're not
That's right.
American. They don't see the average American as their people. Their
Hmm.
people are the elite people.
That's right.
They're the people who have power over, who have ultimate power. Those are those people.
Mhm.
And then we are basically a resource for them to tap and a people to control. Because when you have all the money in the world, money doesn't exist. Things don't really matter. What's your next currency? It's going to be power and control.
Well, Brandon, what is your social security number? It's a banknote. It basically states that the U.S. government can use us as capital. That's what a social security number is.
It's that. It's a tracking number.
Yes.
It it is basically a barcode.
Yes.
It's a sophisticated barcode.
We become a commodity.
Well, we're a resource for them
Exactly.
to use for labor, work, whatever. Uh, we're their bank,
Hmm.
and after they have all that, we're just things for them to control to make them feel powerful.
And again, as we kind of shift now and we talk about what happened with Helene and with Milton. So you have Helene that was never should have never been categorized as a hurricane because to be a hurricane, to be a category 1, you have to have winds in excess of 80 to 100 miles an hour. The winds never got over 65 miles an hour. So the winds, even when it hit land, the winds were between 55 and 65 miles an hour. So you have Helene that makes landfall. They keep calling it a hurricane, but it truly wasn't a hurricane. It was a tropical storm, is what
Mhm.
it was, because it never reached the wind speeds to be considered a hurricane. But so as it made landfall and it makes that path, up through Georgia and up through Tennessee, up into, um, you know, North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina, and Tennessee, and it it just stops. Now, what we do know is that a few weeks prior, North Carolina and Tennessee had a 1,000-year flood, basically. They weren't flooded, but the ground was saturated already.
Mhm.
So that mountainous regions of the Appalachians was already saturated. So now I think you said what how much water was dumped?
It was actually 3 trillion gallons of water. But think of it this way: you have a cloud full of water, and it moves. I mean, obviously, it rained all the way up there, but it
Hmm.
didn't rain like it did when it got there. So
Exactly.
basically, think of it: you got a water balloon that's leaking, and then you move it over an entire state of Georgia, and because the main stuff in Georgia was, I mean, there was some flooding, but the main thing was the wind from the hurricane
Yeah.
was destroyed. But then you get it right over uh, North Carolina, Tennessee, and you just pop the balloon and it all just drops.
Hmm.
And That doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. Weather, it doesn't, rain doesn't hold over a period of, and then just dump somewhere. It just doesn't work like that. And people should go look at the radar anomalies around that storm. It is crazy.
Oh, it's fascinating. And you know what gets me is usually as a hurricane comes over land, it starts to slow down and it starts to dissipate. And actually, as it slows down, the rains start to lessen and lessen, and then it kind of peters out. But it's like after it kind of went over Georgia, it picked up a little bit of pace and it grew with intensity as far as the mass of water that was dumped on this
Oh yeah,
region.
the cloud density stayed the
Yeah,
same. The
yeah,
winds died
exactly.
down,
And
but the
go ahead. I'm sorry.
but the storm itself, it's almost like it held on to itself until it got to where it was steered to go. And now looking at it, you cannot convince me the storm was not steered exactly to where it hit. Uh, who is it? Dane Winnington. He's got a YouTube channel where he tracks the weather anomalies around the storm. And with this storm, so cloud seeding with this storm, they used a um, I want to say it was a type of uh, chemical that could be electrically charged through, what was it? The uh, NextRad networking frequency transmission using, yeah. So NextRad is basically the network frequency company that or that Doppler radar uses, that they can use the Doppler radar itself to positively charge these chemicals are dropping into the storm, and which, when you charge a storm, it's obviously going to get more powerful and bigger. But you're also giving that storm a charge. Then you can electromagnetically steer it using the magnetic frequencies being shot from Doppler radar in order to steer it where you want it to go.
Because it just seemed to stop right over the Appalachian region and
Yeah,
hang there.
it's like if you had a magnet and you're using opposite pole magnets to steer that one magnet to where you want it to go, and
Hmm.
then you can use a magnetic field to control where it moves and where it goes.
Yeah, and it just so happens that the biggest lithium mine in the United States and the biggest quartz mine in the United States is right in that region. And guess who owns the stock in those mines?
The large
BlackRock.
shareholder is BlackRock and Kamala Harris's
That's
husband.
his husband.
Yes.
Imagine that. So if you want, and months prior, companies had tried to go into that region and start trying to buy people's land and property, and people were not selling. They didn't want to sell their land.
No, and the name of that Piedmont Lithium. They're the Piedmont Lithium is a company contracted by the DoD, Department of Defense, to mine all of that lithium, and they were hemorrhaging like billions of dollars because they've been trying since, was it, 3 years ago, to get the rights to that mine. However, the local population and local government officials were not approving the mining rights for that area. So it's very convenient that a storm comes in and floods the whole thing and kicks everybody out. And then the day after the storm hits, Kamala Harris signs off uh, on Piedmont Lithium to have the rights to that mine. And before even people could get out of there, people are still stuck in there when they were delivering
Exactly.
bulldozers to basically bulldoze that land and start mining right then and there. And
And
also, it's not just lithium. It right next to it's quartz,
quartz.
which is a
Mhm.
massive what do they call them? Not microconductors.
Well,
Um,
they're using microchips,
yeah, um, I just forgot the term. Semiconductors. Yeah,
semiconductors. Yeah.
that quartz is used in semiconductors for electronic boards and chips and stuff like that. So you're killing two birds with one stone. You're getting lithium to make batteries, and you're getting the microconductor or the semiconductor with the quartz all in that one area. And I mean, that's not a coincidence. It's not. The day after the
Yeah.
storm hits, this
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is just so obviously whether you want to believe that it I mean, at this point it's not really believing when the government can control the weather or at least manipulate it to what they want it to do, which is the same thing in my eyes. But to them, their definitions, I went through the whole document on the terms and meanings and stuff, the difference between weather, uh, weaponization of weather, weather manipulation, climate control, cloud seeding. They all use these terms that pretty much they do the same thing, like cloud seeding. You don't know if they're putting chemicals or if they're putting ionized particles to create storms when they're flying through the air with a big chemtrail on the back of it. You don't
Yeah.
know which one that is. However, it's all the same thing. It's first of all,
Yeah.
it's not good for you, and it's not good in general. It's all evil stuff.
Mhm. Yeah.
They're not trying to.
But
They're trying to create a climate change to gain more control over what you do and what you can do.
well, and it's like, why did they want to classify Helene as a hurricane when it was a tropical storm? It's because they're trying to set a narrative that we have to combat climate change because all of these hurricanes, and all of this weather situation, we've got to get climate change under control. Therefore, we need to get legislation in place so we can, you know, control you and what you can and can't do. So we have total control. When it's a crock of crap. It's not real. The earth has always heated and cooled, and for millennia the earth was 3 or 4 degrees hotter than it is now, and it's
Oh
it's
yeah,
you know and things were perfectly okay.
yeah, and I mean it's like I said before. You want to stop climate change? Stop dumping crap into the climate.
Exactly, 100%.
And I'm not talking
100%.
about the citizens stop dumping crap. I mean,
Oh,
because I mean, on your average day of living, how much toxic chemicals do you dump into your local lake or pond or whatever? No, nobody
yeah.
does. Who is the number one polluter of our environment? It is massive corporations
Yes.
and the government
Yeah.
doing it.
And
So here's a thought. How about stop doing that and we don't have any problems?
that's what the EPA is there for, is to stop these companies that are doing stuff illegally by dumping, but yet these big companies, will pass a big check under the table and say, "Hey, turn a blind eye to what we're doing," to the EPA or to a particular person in Congress or the Senate. Oh, we're going to give to your campaign, but we want you to turn a blind eye to what we're doing over here. We're dumping these millions of gallons of whatever into the ocean, and we don't want you to know. You don't need to know about it. Just let's keep it on the down low. But here's your check, so you'll keep you'll keep your head turned and not watch what we're doing. And
Oh
that
yeah,
stuff
well,
goes on.
and what they'll do is like what they do here in Nashville. Why does the Cumberland River look like a giant mud puddle? And because these companies they dump so much toxic crap into that river,
I wouldn't
and
eat a fish out of that
instead
river
of
for save my life.
no, well the thing is, all they do is they just pay their fine, their yearly fine.
Yeah.
And what is a fine? It's a payment.
Hmm.
It's like,
It's
oh,
a
here you go.
payoff,
Here,
not a payment, a payoff.
yeah, that's what I meant to say. Yeah, a payoff. It's a payoff. Here's your fine.
Hmm.
Keep dumping.
Yeah. Yeah. We're just as long as we get that money, we're gonna keep you keep dumping. We don't care. It's ridiculous when some of these people need to be imprisoned because they're destroying the environment. They're causing people to get sick, and it's just. But yet, the average Joe, me and you, who are just trying to survive, the government wants us to start paying carbon credits. Basically, they want to tax us for driving a combustible engine vehicle. You know, we want. What did Biden say he wanted, or was it Biden, or was it that lunatic Klaus Schwab that by 2035 he wanted everybody driving an electric car? Well,
I mean, they're two different puppets in the same play.
well, you got Billy Gates over here who has a
Yeah,
patent
let's talk
on con.
about Billy Gates because
Yeah,
this dude is an evil. He is the modern day Doctor Evil, except he's not funny.
yeah, and you see, look, well, Klaus Schwab. Okay, let's talk about Klaus. Klaus Schwab is Doctor Evil, and if you remember in the
Austin
the
Powers,
Austin Powers, you had Doctor Evil, and then his son, that little snotty kid,
Scotty.
Scotty. Scotty is, or Billy Gates is Scotty. So Klaus Schwab is Doctor Evil, and Billy Gates is
He
Scotty.
even runs like him.
Yes, I mean you can't make this stuff up. I mean these are the consequential characters of this movie. Klaus Schwab is Doctor Evil, and Scotty is Billy Gates. And so Billy Gates has a patent on controlling hurricanes, um, and then he has a patent on using these chemtrails to supposedly minimize the effects of the sun on heating up the earth. So he has these patents. And how is he an expert, Brandon? How is he an expert on weather? How is he an expert on controlling the Earth's temperature? I get it. He's a billionaire, but
He's a
he's a billionaire
billionaire.
because
He was
he's a
appointed.
thief. Well, he's a thief because he stole technology and he became a billionaire with it. He didn't even finish college. So what gives him the experience and the right to be able to, be a person who deals in so-called vaccines? And if we, his quote, if we do a good job of vaccines, we can probably depopulate anywhere to, you know, 10 to 5 million and do a really good job. I mean, that's exactly what he said.
Yeah, he says stuff like that all the time. That's why he's never on TV because
Yeah.
he gives no f's.
Yeah. And
Like
he,
that's why they don't put him on TV, and he's not a spokesperson for anything. First of all, is
yeah.
because he'll flat out say whatever he wants to say, and he was an appointed person of power. He did not create anything.
Yeah.
He I don't even think he managed anything. I think that he is a willing person to go with the objective of the New World Order, or the
Hmm.
WEF as we call it today. That's been rebranded and repackaged. A
Hmm.
lot of this stuff, like the Illuminati and Freemasons and stuff, a lot of them still have their current day like relevance, but a lot of these things have been just has been these powerful people that get together and they have a club. They name their club. They start doing all their evil crap because, I mean, it's the oldest story. Evil tries to take over the world.
Hmm.
I mean, that is
Yeah.
always it's almost like comical, but that's their only and all. They're always their objective is to take over the world. They want to take over the world. You see it in every single movie, every single story. It's so it shouldn't be any surprise that we see it in reality in our everyday life.
Yeah.
Evil people
And
try to take over the world.
and not to
And
mention he's been to Epstein's Island quite a few times.
right. So if you're in a club of evil people trying to take over the world and a guy comes along that says, "Hey guys, I know I'm not uh pure blood or whatever, but you know what? Elect me to be the CEO of whatever, and I'll go with your agenda."
Hmm.
Yeah, they'll be like, "Okay, then you're the new CEO of Microsoft." And on top of that, we'll throw in, how about you dabble in this stuff, vaccines? We want to depopulate people. Push that narrative, make that happen.
Hmm.
He's a point guy. He's a yes man to the evil people that are behind all this.
And if you really do a deep dive into Billy Gates's family, his father was a eugenicist. His father was a proponent of Margaret Sanger, who was the freaking witch of Planned Parenthood. I mean, Bill Gates' father was a big delegate of depopulation, and he was a starch racist who believed exactly what Margaret Sanger believed is we want to depopulate the African American people, and the way we're going to do it is through abortion. And that's
Yeah,
the God's honest truth. When you do the deep dive, that's exactly what Planned Parenthood wants to do. That's what Margaret Sanger's agenda was, and that's what Bill Gates' father's agenda was. And he's doing exactly what his father did. He's following in his father's
exactly.
footsteps.
And the thing, and how do you get people to go along with something like that? Well, you limit their resources. You
Hmm.
limit the potential resources they could have. And you do that through lots of different avenues of manipulation
Hmm.
and control. So when people feel like they can barely take care of themselves, and I'm not talking about races or anything. I'm just talking about people in general.
Yeah.
When when you have a society of people who can barely take care of themselves, of course they're going to that thought of, hey, take a problem, or and you sit there and so that babies are problems, babies are off, like having a baby out of wedlock is awful, and all this stuff is awful and awful, 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 and it's going to ruin your life. What is that like? That's the number one thing. Oh, it's going to ruin my life. All
Hmm.
this stuff. Of course, people are going to eventually go along with that. And now we've gotten to a point today where people actually celebrate it. That's absolutely, like, think about that. That's absolutely insane.
It's totally insane.
And what crutch do they go off of? They go off the R word and incest, which, I mean, I'm sure it happens. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But how many people is that actually happening to? I'd love to see a stat on that.
Well, and they also go out and say, well, this is about women's productive rights. But here's the thing. When you look at the hard data of women who have had their, the abortions, is the hard data shows that a woman is 60% more likely to have cancer after an abortion because of the trauma to the body. And that's a fact. That's not made up. That is an absolute 100% fact. The
Oh yeah,
studies have proven it.
and not to. And I feel like we kind of got a little off basis there, just
Yeah.
because there's so many just things that these people are doing that you ask yourself first of all, why are they doing it, and like what motivation do they have, like
Mm,
what is their purpose, and it's really hard for people to really understand because people don't think like that. People aren't that sociopathic.
yeah.
These people, you cannot understand their motives other than just being evil
Mm,
because most people are not sociopaths.
exactly. Yeah.
Most people are not evil.
Hmm.
These people are evil. And they're evil people. Evil people in general are dangerous, but evil people with a massive amount of control, influence, and power are the most dangerous people in the world.
Mm,
And that's just this subject got really just like dark as far as what they're doing, as far as cloud seeding, the chemicals and stuff like that. It was overwhelming to me, kind of.
well, it
And
all it all encompasses, and I know we kind of got off base with the Pan Parenthood thing, but it all falls on the umbrella of climate change. We, and when I say we, the government and these people who are saying that climate change is real and we've got to do something about climate change. It all falls under that umbrella that, well, because most of your people that are big into climate change are also depopulators as well. They believe in depopulation because they go hand
yes,
in hand. Because in order to get climate change under control, then we've got to depopulate the planet. Part of depopulating the planet is through abortion, is through, now they're talking about euthanasia with older people, with also people that have um,
mental
diseases,
disorders.
mental disorders, and
People with
certain
mental disorders in California are subject to. I forgot the bill that they try to pass. It didn't pass because it was just this insane. But the fact that somebody had enough authority to even draft a bill that says people with mental disorders can be subject to euthanasia.
it's that's a crime, man. That's a crime against humanity, dude.
Not only that, you're talking about, I mean, somebody with a mental disorder, you're saying you should have the right to just kill them?
Exactly.
Like, what?
Well, does that mean, Brandon, when I get to be 88 years old and maybe get old and decrepit and maybe, I need some help and maybe I need a wheelchair? Does that mean, oh, well, you're a drain on society, Mr. Mathis? It's now time to go take your euthanasia pill because you're too much of a drain on society. That's basically
No,
what they're saying.
well, the purpose of that is that people with mental disorders and elderly people are not assets anymore to the government.
Hmm.
They're liabilities because they draw more in government funds, government programs, and government resources.
Hmm.
So their entire lifetime, they were an asset because they were a piggy bank that the government could tap. Once your piggy bank's dried up and you don't have the means to refill it, or it's just like insurance companies. Like let's take auto insurance companies. So an auto insurance company, a company that provides auto insurance in case you get in an accident, that they will you pay them money every month, a hefty amount of money every month, and they agree to take care of you and anybody involved if it was your fault or whatever in case you're in an accident. That sounds like a great thing. Yeah, okay, I'll give you some money in just in case the worst happens. You've got my back. Then what happen? Let's say that unfortunate day happens.
Hmm.
What do? They drop you.
Yeah.
If you
Or
have,
they raise your premium.
well, they'll raise your premium. Any insurance to do that.
Yeah.
But I've had two accidents. I'll just say this:
Mhm.
I've had two accidents. One was my fault. One was not my fault. And they want to drop me as a customer because I've had two accidents. That's what you're for. You're an insurance company.
You take the risk.
Yeah. So if you're not going to hold up your end of the bargain, you want to basically their thing is I want to only insure people who are not going to need my service.
Exactly.
So then what so then your company is basically a collection plate.
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell is that?
Yeah. For
But
sure.
I know we were spinning off again, but it's just this insane stuff that's happening in the world today just does not make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. And then, as we kind of pivot again, there's a gentleman by the name of Eric Hecker who is a CIA whistleblower he's been on several podcasts. He was on the Sean Ryan show, and he was the guy that was down at Antarctica, and he was like some type of maintenance man, but he had, um, I guess, his job description was he worked in and around this area where they had this direct energy weapon, and he had actually seen the plans for it. He had seen it in operation, and he said in 2011 that they were doing some testing with this directed energy weapon, and this supposed directed energy weapon caused the massive earthquakes at Christchurch in 2011, Christchurch, New Zealand,
Mhm.
um, and that it works off of magnetic energy, that frequency is basically there's these giant, these giant magnets, and they can send out a magnetic pulse, which is pinpointed from um, satellites. So they use satellites beaming down to pinpoint a particular target, and through the satellites they can send this directed energy magnetic wave to hit a certain area, and that supposedly that this energy weapon is what caused that massive earthquake at Christchurch.
Oh yeah, and I'll give it to him. Weather weaponization is, I mean, if you're trying to disrupt a anything and completely be hands off and not liable for anything, I mean, nobody can get mad at the weather.
Yeah, exactly. And
I mean, you can
uh,
play. It was an act of God. It was blah blah blah. I mean, that's the perfect culprit to hide behind is weather, earthquakes, natural disasters in general. I mean, the forest fires and stuff causing a drought, so the underbrush dries up. Then anything can just. I mean, it's just a time bomb setting, waiting to
yeah,
be
it's
set
it's a
off.
tinderbox. It's a freaking tinderbox. That's why. Let's take a recap, okay? So a few years ago, you have the massive fires in California that decimate millions of acres, millions of acres of prime property in California. Then you have the fires that happen in Hawaii, in that major area of Hawaii that is owned by indigenous people. And the only way that the government can take that property is if there's a natural disaster. And by golly, there was a natural disaster. And now that whole area that was owned, some of that was prime property that's been there for just decades, is now decimated and gone. And people are still not allowed into that area. Still not
No.
allowed. And then you have the massive fires that are going on right now, I think in Wyoming, and then you have these hurricanes that are pinpointing certain areas. I mean, I get it. People may call me and you conspiracy theorists, but these supposed fires and hurricanes, I'm sorry, they're pinpointing certain areas that are very, very important to supposed very, very important people.
Right. And the kind of banking off that as far as like why they would do stuff like this. Well, if you're the government, or if you're a powerful person and you want something that you clearly can't take by force because then you become the enemy in the eye of public opinion. And here's the thing that we have as citizens to our advantage. We have, first of all, there's much more of us than there are of them.
Yes.
And their biggest fear is us realizing that and
Hmm.
uniting together. And they do have to answer to us on a surface level. They
Hmm.
can't blatantly just go in there and take a bunch of people's land and expect nobody to know about it because
Yeah.
in today's society, I mean, what 60 years ago they could probably get away with stuff like that in remote parts of the country that nobody knows about and nobody knows what goes on in the town, and it's just kind of an isolated tiny town. But now we have the internet, we have social media, we have everything and anything on camera and on video. They can't do that because who's going to look like the bad guy? The government will be.
Yeah.
So what do? If they want the land, they can't take it through eminent domain without looking like the bad guy. You got an election in a few months.
Hmm.
You're the uh
Heck, in a few months, you got an election in a few weeks.
or yeah. Well, you got election in a month. You got to
Hmm.
have the public opinion on your side. But your contractor, Piedmont Lithium's contracts due right now in 2025. And they've got nowhere to go. They can't mine anywhere else. And we're sitting on a bunch of lithium and quartz. And your husband is the largest shareholder next to BlackRock and Vanguard. And you stand to make a bunch of money. Well,
Hmm.
call up the DoD. Hey, can we get a natural disaster in here?
That's right.
Okay, we can do that.
Hmm.
Then you can displace everybody who didn't want that mining going on
Hmm.
through force. Whoever did, whoever didn't die for or unalived through the whole thing, you offer them
Hmm.
$750. But
Yeah.
what you don't tell them is that $750 is a loan that you have
Yeah.
to pay back before January 1st. And if you
Hmm.
don't, the contingency of that clause is the government can take over your land legally,
Hmm.
which doing it that way is not going to get out because it's a document that you sign that you probably won't read. And that's what they bank on.
Hmm.
And so, therefore, there's no big giant class action lawsuit that will get a bunch of public media time or anything like that. So, that's how you do it. I mean, if I was an evil person who didn't care about anybody
Yeah.
except for myself and my own stuff, and I that seems like a lot. That doesn't seem like a conspiracy to me. That seems like a normal thing that normal evil people do,
Yeah.
and it's just it's pretty crazy. Like this whole subject is pretty heavy. That's that's a I didn't I never really considered weather warfare as an like a firearm in their armory that they can use, but I guess they can.
Yeah.
But that gets back to the whole purpose of this podcast is because you can research this stuff and just be like, wow, how am I supposed to fight against weather warfare?
Yeah.
But it's to get this information out to people, make people aware what's going on, make people not make people, but provoke thought.
Hmm.
And we live in a society today where a lot of people, mindlessly go through their day to day lives and don't. And it's easy to do that. And I don't blame people for doing that because, heck, I mean, uh, in today's time, we have a lot of problems that people have to deal with on a day to day basis. And the last thing you want to think about is problems that you can't really do anything about yourself. But if we all banded together and we all talked about these problems,
Hmm.
we bring them to the light. And that's one thing they don't want. But
That's right.
that was my little soapbox speech that I kind of got on.
Yeah.
But this stuff we may need to do another podcast down the stretch on this because this
Yeah.
whole weather warfare was. I mean, I've heard about it. Honestly, I didn't even have a thought on it because I hadn't done any research into
Hmm.
it, and like low key thought it was kind of a little out there.
Hmm.
Uh, But after once a hurricane happens, obviously you think, and then you're wondering why FEMA's not is
Yeah.
confiscating people's donations, and then why the U.S. Coast Guard is grounding civilian helicopters that are trying to go rescue people, and then we just give $3 billion to Ukraine, and we don't give any money to Uh, I want to know something about $750. What significance that has as far as a payout or something
Yeah.
legally? Because it's weird that that's what um, uh, Lahaina people were
Yeah. They got
offered,
seven.
and
They got offered 700, and the
I thought it was
Appalachian people.
750.
No, the Appalachian people got offered 750, but the Lahaina people got offered 700.
Well, there's got to be some type of loophole there legally or something like that.
Yeah, it keeps it at that number.
Because that's
It's
a weird
weird.
coincidence, and
Yeah.
I don't believe in coincidence with these people.
Mm-mm, not at all.
But
Not at all.
once you start asking yourself those questions, none of that makes sense.
Mm-mm, it truly doesn't.
Oh, did you hear about um, the sheriff departments of the counties around North Carolina have
Well,
basically united as I guess you could call it a militia because they're not operating under the orders of the governor anymore, and they're basically arresting any federal official or FEMA
it's
member or anybody um, trying to keep people from getting resources or trying to interfere with rescuing and all that stuff
mhm.
like that. They're basically saying we're not doing it anymore.
Yeah, I've heard that. And they're saying that they're going to keep them indefinitely until this thing's over. They're going
Yeah,
to keep them in custody. So
that's
I'm all
pretty. I
for it.
mean, I'm all for it too. I mean, that's bold. That's a
Yeah.
major statement.
Well, that's true patriotism. That's people, American people standing up and saying enough is enough. You're not going to come into our area and you're not going to tell us what to do, how to do it, and steal. But they're basically stealing these these goods that are coming in to help these people. And you know, I don't know if you saw any of it, but there was a guy who had like 20 something goats. He was on a mule. He loaded these goats up with supplies and led these goats up the mountain to bring supplies to people that were stranded. And then there were several mule trains and donkeys that they loaded up with supplies. And that's the only way they could get to these people that are up way up in the mountains because all the roads are washed out. So the only way to do it was to do like the olden days, man, is load up these donkeys and these goats and just go the old mountain ways. And
Yeah,
these
it's
people
almost
are
like these people are having to smuggle stuff in
yeah.
there.
And hey,
Or like at the beginning when FEMA was kind of in charge with all this stuff, they've really lost. Like after that whole sheriff department statement and them actually going through with it, and then they kind of kicked FEMA out of there. But at the beginning of all this, FEMA was confident. There was a lady that I saw interview that got interviewed a couple weeks ago that said that she trains canines. She trains cadaver dogs for
mhm,
the sheriff's department, and she had three of her own personal dogs that she took up there. FEMA
mhm.
took her dogs. They confiscated. She wasn't even bringing resources. She was bringing cadaver dogs to help find people's bodies and get them back to their families. And FEMA confiscated her dogs.
Dude, that would I,
I would have. Oh my gosh! Somebody took my dog.
I would lose my ever loving mind first. I I hate to say what I would do, but it would not bode well for FEMA if they tried to take my dogs.
Well, that's why that FEMA person got beat up. I remember seeing on something. I didn't look too much into the story, but apparently one of the head of FEMA went when I think he was down there. Uh, was basically ordering people around and not giving people supplies and kind of almost like berating it in front of them. Like I think there was a big case of water or something like that, or some supplies that uh, he had possession of, and people were like coming up to him asking for it, and he was like, "No, this is my stuff," and basically like taunting them with the supplies, and then they just basically whipped his ass.
Good for them. That's
Yeah,
what should have happened. That's what should have happened. And I'm not advocating for violence, but
no,
enough is enough. And sometimes you have to teach people how to do the right thing. And there's nothing like a good old taking somebody behind the barn and giving them a good old country boy ass whipping to to make them walk the chalk line. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Sometimes you got to do that to get it through people that, hey, if you're not going to do what we say you need to do, then we're going to take you behind the barn and take care of business.
yeah, and honestly, the fact that people are waking up to all this stuff, I don't condone violence because I mean, if the day ever came where we'd have to do that, I'm fine with it. But that shouldn't be that shouldn't
That
be
should be
the
the last
first,
resort.
second, or third or
Yeah,
fourth
that's the last resort
option.
always. And
But
I don't want to hurt nobody. I don't want to see nobody get hurt. But at the same time, when you're taking food out of innocent victims' mouths, you need to be dealt with. Now,
yeah,
if that means that somebody's knuckles punches out your teeth, and that's how to deal with it because you can't get your head out of your rear, then so be it. That may have to happen to get you, somebody knock you into reality, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, you can tell that since people are waking up, they're starting to spiral and act crazy because of all the stuff they're doing. I don't.
Hmm.
It's almost like they can feel the control slipping out of their hands, and they're just doubling down harder and harder and harder and harder and harder, and they're getting sloppy, and it's just getting worse for them.
And you're dealing with people in the mountains. Mountain people are different because they tend to do the old ways. That's just that that's the way mountain people are. And when you come in and say, "Hey, we're going to confiscate your land or we're going to confiscate this," they don't it does not bode well for them. They're not going to give it to you without some replication somewhere.
Well, the mountain people are number one. They're self sufficient. They
Yes.
don't need anything from anybody. Then they don't want anything from anybody,
And they take care of their own.
and they do. And number two, you can't really you can't really the fact they don't want anything from people, you can't bribe them
Yeah.
out of there, and they don't like being told what to do because they they don't need anything from, and that's what terrifies people in power is they like to have people under their thumbs. They like
Mhm.
people who need stuff for the government,
And now,
and they don't want anything from the government, nor do they need anything from the government, and that drives them nuts.
and and here's the thing. They did have some after this situation with Helene, and then the water started to recede. Well, you got people that are stranded. They're landlocked because roads are out. There's still some major flooding. There was some looting going on. But when you got babies that are hungry, you're going to do what you have to do to make sure your babies are fed. That's just that's it. That's the way. Now, I would not want to loot somebody else's property. I think that what I would do is go and search out and say, hey, do you have? Could you spare a little bit of food? My children are hungry, whatever. But when people get to the point where they're desperate, desperate people will do desperate things. And people were caught unprepared because they lost everything. You know, some of these people's homes totally are gone. Their property is gone. It's gone. So now you're reduced. If you did get out and you survived, you have nothing.
You have nothing to survive,
You have
and not only
nothing to
that,
survive.
you can't even like. It's almost being. It's much different trying to survive on a raft in the middle of the ocean than it is trying to survive in the wilderness.
Exactly.
With that, you have resources around you. On a
Hmm.
raft, you have no resources.
Well, but at that, Brandon, think about it.
And so when you're landlocked from a flood and you don't have a home anymore, you don't have, and you literally just have the stuff in your pocket and the clothes on your back.
And if you
Not only
wanted
that,
to live
everything
off the
around
land,
you is contaminated.
exactly. And if you wanted to live off the land, there's no wildlife because all the wildlife is gone. So
And what are you
every
going to hunt it down with?
exactly, you don't have a weapon. You don't you don't have anything. So you you you're hoping and praying that somebody comes to the rescue. And then you got FEMA down here, down at the base of the mountain, stealing food out of people's mouths basically. You know, good for these sheriffs to stand up and say, "No, enough is enough. You're not going to do this to our people. We're going to handle this." we're going to be the ones that are going to handle this, you know?
Yeah.
So I got to give props to those sheriffs. And it was funny because some of the sheriffs, there's an organization called Christian Warriors, and these guys are ex special forces, ex special ops, all these guys. And so one of the leaders of Christian Warriors was sitting there, and they had been deputized by the local sheriffs in that region, and they were running security for the sheriffs. And basically, this head guy from Christian Warriors said, "Hey, any of you people that run into any government agency that's going to try to stop you, going to try to take your vehicle, take your supplies, um, take your weapons, you call us on the radio, and we're going to go there and tell them to go f themselves." And he didn't say f themselves. He said, we're, because that's uncalled for. You're not going to take our resources. We're trying to help these people that are stranded. That they're still, Brandon. They're still digging bodies out. At this point, it's not rescue anymore. It's body
Retrieval.
recovery. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's body retrieval at this point. And I heard one report from one girl that they're they're reporting. I don't know what the death toll is, but I think the death toll has been up a little bit over 200. And this lady said it's going to be in the thousands. She said there's people, whole families that are gone. And one report said that they had found this guy alive. He was totally submerged up to his chest. And when the rescuers got to him, he said, "Go ahead and kill me." And they said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, my family's dead." And they said, "Well, how do you know your family's dead? They might still be alive." He said, "My family is underneath me, and 3 days ago I felt them. I felt them let go of my leg." Can you imagine that, Brent?
That's that's crazy.
You know,
And all of
and
this was engineered and orchestrated. That's
yes,
this
yes.
wasn't like this wasn't a natural occurrence.
Mm-mm.
This was orchestrated
If it would have
and
been a natural
engineered.
occurrence, it would never. I don't believe it would have been this bad.
And it's crazy. It's just crazy that when you look into stuff, obviously, and it's not, it's, and this stuff that I researched and the information I found didn't come from a third party or a second party. It came directly from, what was it? I think I had it up right here. Um, here's Department of Defense webpage. We have um Department of Interior's webpage and Homeland Security. That's Yeah, this is all their stuff that they've declassified.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
isn't stuff that I'm making up or I heard or anything like that. This is what they have said to us and declassified. But obviously, nobody really ever goes and reads this stuff. They don't tell you, like, hey guys, we're declassifying this document today. They just
yeah,
kind of put it out there. And
hmm
unless you know what you're looking for, nobody's really going to find it.
yeah.
But that's how they have plausible deniability. Also, I meant to say this earlier. It is the government contractors and stuff that are involved with all this, and the government officials themselves, like HARP and all these other entities.
hmm
They cannot be held legally liable uh, for any damages happening with
hmm
their experiments, with their weather conducting operations or anything like that. They legally cannot. So this hurricane, the stuff in Helene, they legally cannot be held liable for any of it.
Yeah, of course
They
not.
have total. They have the words total immunity from
Yeah,
any legal liability claims.
of course they do.
That is basically saying you can murder a bunch of people using technology to control the weather,
Hmm.
and nobody you have no consequences for it.
Mm. And the thing about it is you're trying to take advantage of people that have been put in a dire situation, and that's
Well,
criminal.
predators prey on the weakest people first.
Exactly. And it's
That's how
absolutely
that's how
criminal.
predators work. They don't prey on people who a lion doesn't go after the strongest one in the herd, and that way it's an even match or something. Or no, they
Yeah.
go off of the weak ones, the ones
Hmm.
that can't defend themselves, the ones that don't have a voice, people who
Yeah.
are up in the mountains and or that live in small towns that nobody really knows about anything goes on there. That's how they operate. I mean, look at Dulce. The population of Dulce, New Mexico is 2,000 people.
Hmm.
You know, that's not a coincidence. They don't
Hmm.
put these stuff in like Manhattan, New York, or or LA and Los Angeles,
Yeah.
California. No, they choose these little small towns that nobody knows about.
Yeah. For
But
sure.
we may have to do another part to this because there's so much stuff that we didn't even
Yeah.
get to. But we
Well,
maybe want, since this was kind of a current event, we really wanted to touch on it and kind of
exactly.
open up that doorway, which I didn't realize was going to be such a full. I didn't even realize the rabbit hole this stuff goes down to.
Oh, I know. And I think, what we're to preface this, what we're looking for or looking to for our next episode, is kind of go into frequencies and frequency weaponry of, you know, using high volume frequency to basically have mind control, and I think this is, just to preface this a little bit, I think this is what 5G is. I think 5G is being used as some sort of neurological weaponry. So because it's very dangerous, especially for the guys that work on the 5G towers. A lot of these guys don't last too long. They get certain type of cancers, have certain type of blood diseases because they're up in those towers working on them, and they're exposed to that high volume of frequency from that 5G. So I think that's
And
going to be
when the
interesting.
5G kind of things a couple years ago first started out,
Hmm.
I honestly was like this. I really thought it was a bunch of crap,
Hmm. Yeah.
and I was like, okay, this is going way too far. We're talking about cell phone signals and stuff like that. I I was like, what? And then what happens? You look into it, and you're like, well, crap. Some of this stuff, what is it
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
And then you have people. I even talked to a couple because I'm in construction. I talked to a couple electricians and stuff about it, and they all confirm exactly what the allegations are with the 5G. Because the main thing with the 5G is they're not on traditional cell phone towers like in the past. They're not 300. There's a reason why these cell phone towers are 300 feet up in the air or whatever,
Yes.
and it's not necessarily to expand the signal. It's just if you had it so close to the ground, it can alter people in a terrible way. It's like
Yes.
standing in front of the microwave for 5 hours with butt naked or something.
Well, and now what they're starting to do is starting to put this 5G antennas, and we'll get into this more, in residential areas like on schools,
I was just about to
on
say that they're putting them in
yeah,
schools
and
and
stoplights and
just on
that
the
kind of
roofs.
thing.
I mean, school buildings, what maximum 2 stories
Yeah.
was that 24 feet or so maybe
Yeah.
above,
So I think
where the device
it's a
is supposed to be 300 feet up in the air to
exactly.
not cause harm to you.
And we truly, I think the federal government knows what the dangers are of 5G. but we truly don't know what the you know what the
Yeah, it
side
hasn't been
effects
out
are.
long enough, but
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
and with the
Not to.
mind altering, I still am looking into the. It's not so much mind control as it is putting certain frequencies can put you in a certain state of mind
Hmm.
subconsciously that you can be more susceptible to
Hmm.
being manipulated. Like if somebody's angry and you're agging them on, you're just going to make them more angry.
Yeah,
So if you can flip a switch and put people in a sense of a state of mind and whatever state of mind you want them in, maybe it's a state of mind that's more susceptible to being less combative or
yes,
easily persuaded or whatever. That I mean that's the type of mind control that people are talking about, not so like tinfoil hat, they're whispering sweet nothings into your ear. But
yeah. But it all plays an effect. It all's a, a, a web of a plan to you know bring everybody under a one supreme government or world entity, governing body. And I really believe that. I believe that it's all a web of lies and deceit that they're wanting to use, whether warfare, 5G technology, and other technologies, to bring us under their control to submit.
yeah, and that's where we'll get into the secret society stuff, the
Hmm.
bloodlines, all that stuff that all traces back to the fallen angels and the whole
Yes.
theme of the podcast. But
Mm.
what was I going to say? Oh, sorry, computer's still running low. What was I going to say? Crap, I lost my train of thought. Oh, so the because the whole that's the whole reason with depopulation. I meant to say this earlier. So to in order to have everybody under one world government, you can't have 7 billion people in the world. It's too many
Yeah.
people.
Hmm.
That's just too much.
Yeah.
So they have to depopulate us down to more
Hmm.
manageable population sizes. While each generation they groom to be more compliant, more susceptible, more immoral, more whatever.
Hmm.
And they do this generation by generation by generation by generation. And by indoctrination, programming, all this stuff. So by the end of it, and we have this one world government or whatever, we will happily comply. That's the thing. It's not going to be a society that is bunch of angry people that feel like they're in prison or whatever. We're going to be in prison. It's like what Klaus Schwab said. You'll own nothing and love it.
Yeah.
You'll
Yeah.
eat the bugs and love it.
Yeah. 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 We will take care of all your needs, and you will be happy because
Yeah.
we will
And
tell you.
you will have nothing and you'll love it.
Yeah. And you must show us your papers.
I can't like it's hilarious to think that he's an actual real human being.
Oh, I mean, he is a truly a Bond villain. He's a
He
James
does. He
Bond
sounds
villain.
like one.
Oh, 100%. I mean, this guy.
Sounds like a damn vampire.
Oh yeah. I mean, this guy is. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, this. He wears those kooky outfits, and it's weird, man.
And he's like
It is.
90 something years old too.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Which that I don't get that. If this guy's so successful and why have we not heard of him up until like 5 years ago? Where has he been the
yeah.
other 85 years of existence?
And if you look into his past, it gets pretty dark as well. And same with George Soros.
Well, George
And
Soros was a Nazi informant.
yeah, a Jewish Nazi informant at that. He
And he
warmed on his
loved
own
his
people.
job.
Oh, and
He
he
loved his
admitted
job.
he admitted that he loved it. Yeah, it gets pretty dark. But well, man, we're at an hour and 39 minutes, man.
Yes, sir. Well,
Yeah,
I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. It definitely
yeah,
gave us a lot or gave everybody a lot to think about,
for
a lot
sure.
to kind of absorb. This was a strenuous researching topic. We'll
Man,
say that.
yeah, I mean, me and you both really dug deep into research in
And
this,
only an
and
hour 40 minutes, we only went over the two hurricanes, a couple of projects from DoD,
yeah,
and a
that didn't
couple
even
of
begin to
other
scratch
things.
the surface, Brandon. It's
Oh
not even
no, I
scratching the
mean
surface.
the stuff goes back from 40 or what 70 years ago, 80 years ago.
Yeah, and you know, who's to say that some of these, you know, tidal waves and that kind of stuff, where were they were they designed, or were they made, or were they natural? You know, who knows at this point? We truly don't know. I want to believe that they were natural, but who knows?
Well, everything's questionable nowadays.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
It's I say whatever they tell us in the media, it's the exact opposite.
Yes,
Like literally,
yes.
it's not assuming the exact. It literally is the exact opposite. Like the
Hmm.
climate control. This is to combat climate control. No, it's actually creating more climate control, and on top of that, you're weaponizing it.
Yeah,
It's they say it's for our best interest, and it actually it's for our worst interest.
yes,
So you could
100%.
pretty much almost like always bet on that hand, and you're going to be winning.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Well, all
But
right, my man. It was a
all
good
right,
good
guys.
talk
Well,
tonight.
enjoyed
I
it,
hope people
and
enjoy it.
again, if anybody has anything, I mean, by this point, you kind of understand what we go over, all things weird, conspiracies and cryptid stuff like that. If you have anything that you want to share with us or be on the podcast, you can feel free to DM us on our Instagram, Secrets of the Fallen. Um, but yeah, let us
And
know.
leave comments on our
Yeah, definitely leave
Spotify.
comments. It really does mean a lot.
Mhm,
Even when I first started, I didn't really know how much it actually impacted the growth of the show. But definitely leave comments, share it. If you don't want to leave a comment, just send it to somebody
mhm.
or listen to this, or definitely click us a follow too, because that helps a ton to help kind of get the show out there. Uh,
And if you're somebody within, the Tennessee, Georgia, Kentucky, Alabama area, kind of the southeastern area, and you have cryptids or strange things on your property that you want us to investigate, we're all about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Definitely reach out to us, and we'll get back to you pretty soon.
Yeah.
So till next time, guys, we're out.
All right.